Hi, you guys. I'm Phil Town from Rule 1 Investing, and today I want to talk to you about creating generational wealth, which means wealth for you, your children, your grandkids, maybe their grandkids, and their grandkids. So down the generations. That would be what we want to do. As a reminder, make sure you click the subscribe button and the bell icon to get notifications when I release new videos. So anybody who knows me knows I'm a proud father and a newly proud grandfather of my little granddaughter, Isla, who is so cute. She was dressed up for Halloween like a really big red strawberry. She's 3 months old, okay? She looked like a strawberry, and if that wasn't enough, apparently they had to do my kids had to do 2 Halloweens, and they dressed her up as a owl, which I like the best. I like the owl one. She looked like a little Viking owl. So like most people, I love my family, and I want the best possible lives for my kids and for their kids. But I also know that life isn't cheap. I know how much it takes to live in this world, to be able to retire comfortably, to get into a good neighborhood with good schools, safe streets, good educations. It's expensive, you guys. So I want to make sure I leave behind a nest egg for my family that can help them all the way down through the generations. Always be able to do the best for the kids. So it's my goal that they don't have to work quite as hard as I did to get by. And it's my promise that I'm going to make that money available to them down the road. So how do we do this? How do we build generational wealth that survives for years to come? First thing is really important to understand that it's completely possible. I mean, names in the news are people who have generational wealth. The Trump family has generational wealth. The Rockefeller family has generational wealth. The Jobs family, the Steve Jobs family, has generational wealth. So people who have made a lot of money automatically start to provide that capital to the next generation down. And you'll see that it's really important that these people who are receiving this financial capital from the previous generation have the capacity and the strategies to manage that money safely. What a tragedy that, your father makes this incredible success and amount of money, works hard, starting from nothing, and becomes successful financially, and then leaves that money to the next generation, which doesn't know how to manage it and squanders that capital. There's even an old saying about money is that the first generation makes it, the second generation loses it, and then the third generation makes it back again because they're close enough to the first generation, that third generation is, that they can still see and maybe still got some guidance on how grandfather figured this all out. But meanwhile, their dad and their mom did not have the skill set. Often because they grew up wealthy, they didn't have the skill set to handle the money and they lost it. So here's the thing. Anybody can get rich, right? I mean, you can get rich hitting the lottery, but staying rich for years, that requires the right tactics and the mindset. Generational wealth, the kind that allows the rich families to stay rich for decades, even centuries, all come from one thing, the right approach to money. And I'm here to tell you that it is amazing how few families are able to sustain generational wealth. Those families that do stay wealthy for generations, they grow their money, passing on even more down to their children than they were given. They know the value of money, number one, and they know how to invest it, how to save it, how to grow it, rather than how to blow through it. If you want to create generational wealth, obviously the first thing you do is become wealthy, okay? That's pretty straightforward. But if you want to stay wealthy, you've got to pass down that skill set that allowed you to get wealthy in the first place, particularly if you guys are following me. If you're following me, I'm following Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett's following Ben Graham. We're in a family now that has generations of wealth. So this family we call the Rule 1 family, and we sometimes call ourselves rulers, right? So the ruler family or the Rule 1 family, these are people who have learned to invest the way Ben Graham started it, the way Warren Buffett teaches it, and these are people who focus on Rule 1, which is don't lose money. And that would apply really well to generational wealth, wouldn't it? Don't lose your family's money that they work so hard to create. don't lose it. So if we're focusing on generational wealth and we're focusing on it with a strategy that says the number one thing we're going to focus on here is not losing the money, then we're going to know that we're going to have a strategy that's incredibly conservative about how that money's managed. Incredibly conservative, probably far more conservative than the way they teach you at school or the way they suggest you invest at your financial advisor. If you know the value of money and you know how hard it is to save it and grow it rather than blow through it, so what do you need to do to get the next generation? The first thing is you have to do it. You can't teach somebody something you don't know, right? In other words, you can't just talk to your kids and tell them they should learn to be an investor if you're not an investor. The old truth is that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right? You might want to teach your kids not to smoke, but if you smoke, they're going to be smokers, okay? So if you want to teach your kids to be an investor, guess what? You need to become an investor. I'm sorry if you don't want to become an investor. I'm sorry if your parents never taught you. I'm sorry if this isn't your mindset, but if you want your children to be successful, then you're going to have to suck it up, bucko, and learn how to invest. And thank God you're here listening to this video and all the other videos we have on this site, because we're going to teach you. You can learn this. It's not rocket science, you guys. This isn't something where a 160 IQ beats a 100 IQ. This isn't about being smart. This is about being patient and following a well-beaten path that's 85 years old. Multiple generations of wealth have been created on this path. All you need to do is just listen and follow it, okay? You got to master the mindset toward money, and you've got to teach that to your kids. And only through this kind of knowledge are fortunes going to continue down the road for generations. So why does wealth seem like it so often just skips generations, right? Why does it go right over the top of the second generation? Wealth being cyclic like that, appearing and reappearing, 2-3 generations step down. And there's a saying that kind of explains that. Hard times create strong people. Strong people create good times. Good times create weak people. And weak people create hard times. So let's think about that for a second and decide kind of where you want yourself to be and where you want your family to be. Do you want them to be wallowing in weakness because you haven't taken the time to learn this and then teach it to them? Or do you want them to be strong who can take what you've started and build on it from there? In many cases, a person who goes from being poor to being wealthy knows the value of money and the value of hard work themselves. That's you and that's me. But often we don't pass these lessons down to our kids. I mean, listen, I've got a podcast called Invested, right? Where I'm trying to teach my 36-year-old daughter how to invest. I mean, I'm a living example of a person that knows how to do this, actually teaches other people to do this, and I still haven't been able to teach my kids these lessons. But I've got some good news for you. They get a little older, they start to pay attention to this stuff, and some of that must seep in because Danielle is getting really, really good at this, and my other kids, Elena, Daniel, and Hunter, are all starting to pay a lot of attention. So look, I'm a perfect example of a guy who made money, and you know what? If I hadn't worked harder on this, I would only be passing down the money, and my kids would just go on, and maybe without any more lessons on how to invest properly, they'd turn out just squander the wealth I've created, the wealth they inherited, since they don't know how to preserve and grow it. And then I got to think, gosh, I hope Isla can figure this out. So if you truly want to create generational wealth, it's essential that you pass down more than just money to your heirs. You've got to do the work. And it ain't easy, baby, because you know that the rule about an expert is it's got to be somebody at least 60 miles away. And that means you to your kids are not an expert. That means you're gonna have to go to extra time and trouble, try to get to them as early as possible, but take the extra time and trouble to try to teach them step by step as you're building that wealth. You gotta teach them all the same lessons that allowed you to become wealthy in the first place. Lessons such as the value of money, the importance of putting money ahead, putting money to yourself first before you set up a budget, the role of hard work, how you understand a business, right? Meaning, moat, management, margin of safety. These are the basics of investing. They're not hard. You could teach your kids that first, understand the business. Second, make sure it has a big, durable competitive advantage. Third, work with people you trust. And fourth, buy it at a margin of safety. This is not rocket science. It's worth it. It's worth it so much to preserve that wealth through more than just a single generation. It's also important to remember there are more important things than money. We've already discussed how teaching your kids the value of money and hard work is just important as creating the wealth itself. Like working with your children is the most amazing thing. I've had such a blast, and it's been an incredible blessing in our lives that I've gotten to do this podcast for the last 3 years with my daughter. The process of teaching her to invest, just brings us closer together. However, there's even more to it than that. You send your kids to college, even if you plan to leave them enough money they never have to work at a job a day in their lives, they are going to provide the world with some value. You want kids that are going to go out there and make the world a better place. So you got to get them educated. You got to help them find their dharma. You got to provide them with an education that gives them resources to try this thing or try that thing or try this other thing so that they can be successful at contributing to the world on their own. At the very least, this kind of background will provide them with a work ethic and the understanding they need to successfully manage the money they inherit and, God willing, have a life of dharma that's doing what they were born to do in this life. And if worse comes to worse, it'll also provide them the resources they need to make it on their own if the wealth they inherit dries up for any number of reasons. You never know what's going to happen out there. So spend quality time with your children as well. Show them the type of life that good financial planning can provide. Do some cool things with that money. Don't just sit on it, right? Don't just hoard it. There are too many stories of children blowing through their parents' wealth because they came to resent the money and the way that it absorbs their parents' full attention. Don't be one of those stories. Rule 1 investing is not about spending 80 hours a week digging away at a salt mine trying to create wealth. We're talking about doing the work. Once you've done the work, 15 minutes a week is all you need. The rest of that time can be devoted to spending time with those kids, teaching them what you learned. Keep in mind that creating generational wealth entails so much more than simply passing money down the road. If you take a holistic approach to wealth, providing your heirs with everything they need to succeed in addition to the money itself, you and those you leave behind you will be far better served, and so will our world. And that's what I love. So now I'd love to hear from you guys. What are you teaching your kids about money, and what are they learning from watching you? Leave a comment below with your answer, and I'll be sure to follow up with you. So thanks for watching, you guys. Now go play. If you enjoyed this video and you feel it was valuable in teaching you more about creating and maintaining generational wealth, hit the like button and please share this video with your friends. And if you want more investing content, subscribe to my channel. And don't forget to click the button on the screen for a free gift. Thanks again for watching.